I'm Jeff Paur, senior writer for RealTime Fantasy Sports, and welcome to another edition of the RealTime Fantasy Sports Show. On today's show, I'm going to give you my 5 fantasy takeaways from week 9 of the fantasy football season. There's still one more game to be played tonight. The Jets and Patriots should be a real exciting one, right? No, not so much. But I'm going to give you my takeaways from the games that have taken place. Hopefully that game ends up being a good one tonight, but we'll see. All right, here's my first takeaway from week 9. Kyler Murray is the Lamar Jackson of this year. So Murray hit the 100-yard rushing mark this week, scored 4 total touchdowns. He has 2 straight 4-touchdown games, top 40 fantasy points each of those last 2 games. He has 6 3-touchdown games this year, 16 passing touchdowns and 8 rushing touchdowns. He's run for 543 yards. He has a chance to hit that 1,000-yard rushing mark as a quarterback, which is extremely rare to do, as we saw with Lamar Jackson, as he did it last year. Murray is a special, special talent. And if you have him on your fantasy team this year, you are having a lot of success. Jackson hasn't lived up to what he did last year. Murray has fit the bill this year, though, and taken the reins as that top running quarterback in the NFL. He's also doing a great job throwing the ball, too, to all of his weapons in the passing game. Murray has been a dynamic talent this year, and he looks to be special for years to come. My number 2 takeaway, the running back position is a mess. There were just 2 100-yard rushers this week, and one of those was a quarterback. It was the aforementioned Kyler Murray. And there were just 2 running backs total that had more than 70 rushing yards. The running back position is a mess for fantasy teams, not getting it done. But on the opposite side of things, passing games continue to have a lot of success. There were 11 300-yard passers at the quarterback position, and 3 of those quarterbacks threw for 370-plus yards. And because of those big games through the air by the quarterbacks, receivers, tight ends had a lot of success as well. We had 15 receivers and 1 tight end hit their 100-yard receiving mark, and 3 players had double-digit receptions. So what does this all mean? For me, it's something to consider when you're looking at that flex spot. I always erred on the side of caution and went with a running back at the flex spot for the most part, because they have a pretty high floor. But at this point, some of these running backs just aren't getting it done, especially the secondary options. Guys like David Montgomery just aren't doing much. So I would really consider using the receiver position as one to fill for your flex spot going forward, just because quarterbacks continue to have a ton of success throwing the ball. Receivers are posting big weekly numbers. Running backs are a lot more of a question mark, in my opinion. So just something to consider when you look at these numbers from this past week. All right, my number 3 takeaway from week 9. Keenan Allen remains one of the most underappreciated receivers in the game. Another big game this week, 9 catches for 103 yards and a touchdown. He has at least 9 catches 3 straight games. He's on pace for 124 receptions for 1,302 yards and 8 touchdowns this year. The emergence of Justin Herbert has been great for Allen and should be good for him for years to come. Allen, the big thing with him is staying healthy. He stayed healthy this year, though, and he's posting huge numbers. This guy is a great player, one of the best receivers in the game, and I think he's overlooked at times. He's having a huge season for fantasy teams. A lot of fantasy owners were able to get him as a number 2 receiver this year, and this is paying off big for them on their roster, in their roster composition, I should say, because Allen is a true number 1 fantasy receiver. My number 4 takeaway for week 9 is Terry McLaurin is the new Allen Robinson. Much like Keenan Allen, this guy just gets it done on a weekly basis. McLaurin had another good game this week, 7 receptions for 115 yards and a touchdown. He has 7 receptions each of his last 3 games. He has at least 7 receptions 5 of 8 games, and he's doing this with his quarterback play in Washington a mess. He just keeps finding a way to produce, much like Allen Robinson has done in recent years in Chicago and Jacksonville. Robinson did not have the best quarterback play, but just gets it done. McLaurin's in the same boat. I wish both of these guys got better quarterback play. If that happened, wow, their ceiling would be even higher. But for now, they're still getting it done. You can't argue with their production. These guys just get it done on a weekly basis and are so consistent for fantasy teams. And McLaurin is just a super, super player. And I think he's an exciting fantasy talent for years to come. Hopefully, Washington gets that quarterback situation figured out in the near future so McLaurin can really reach his full potential in this offense. My last takeaway for week 9 is the Lions need to stop giving Adrian Peterson so much work. So Peterson had 11 touchdowns compared to 11 touches, I should say, compared to 16 for DeAndre Swift this past week. Just watch the tape, though. I know Swift had more work, but he didn't have a whole lot. And if you watch the tape, Swift is so much better than Peterson at this point. He hits a hole so much quicker, makes plays after contact. Peterson just looks a step slow. I know he's one of the greatest backs of all time. He's been a dynamic player for years, but he just isn't in the same category as Swift at this point, in my view. Swift averaged 4.9 yards per carry this past game, Peterson 3.6. Peterson started the season with a bang, but he has averaged fewer than 3.7 yards per carry every game since week 2, and he's still getting a lot of work. He gets double-digit touches per game. I don't think he's worthy of it. I don't know what the Lions are doing. They're not having a very good season. Why not give Swift the bulk of the workload at running back going forward? He deserves it. He's the better back. He could be a fantasy star the rest of the season if that happens. We'll see if it does. Hopefully it does. All right, those are my 5 takeaways from week 9 of the fantasy football season. I hope you had a lot of success, won your games in week 9, and are trending the right way as the playoffs are soon to start in fantasy leagues. This has been Jeff Paur for RealTime Fantasy Sports. Have a great day.